Hey everyone, welcome to Lunch with the Source. I'm Mary Stratton Smith. I'm manager of the Source. Thank you for choosing to spend your lunch with us today. BankPlus created this program to empower and teach professional women, and we also wanted to connect you with industry experts like we have today. Let me briefly introduce today's expert. This is Alison Tyler. She is a human resource professional with a passion for people and 17 years of experience. Her specialties include, I'm going to have to read these out, talent strategy, people engagement, team member growth and development, retention, benefits administration, wellness design, HR policy and regulatory compliance, change management, and employee relations. Y'all, she knows it. She just knows it. Prior to joining BankPlus, Alison worked most recently as the People First Director at HORNE LLP and served as the HR Director at Blue Cross and Blue Shield for many years before that. Please join me in welcoming Alison Tyler.
Thank you, everyone. I am very excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, talent. There's so much to talk about. I started out as a recruiter in my early 20s when I graduated college and fell in love with recruiting. I'm still recruiting today, so I'm very passionate about this subject. I'm going to talk with you today about the current state of talent, what's going on right now in the world and that we live in, and I'm going to talk with you about some ways that you can help your company win the war on talent. And the 4 ways that we're going to talk about are culture, engagement, recruiting strategy, and diversity and inclusion. Before we get started, I want to step back in time, 9 to 5. You heard a little bit of that music playing when you walked in. Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 was released in 1980. In 1980, in the early 80s, the fax was the fastest way to receive a message. The newspaper was where you went to find a job. The unemployment rate was 9.7% nationally in 1982. Fast forward to 2017, present state, messages are received instantly. On demand, jobs are sourced on demand. Unemployment rate nationally is 4.4% last month, a big difference from the 80s. We are at a time of constant change. Technology is rapidly increasing. Digital bandwidth and storage is at an all-time high. On top of that constant change, 74 million baby boomers are leaving the workplace. We have a mass exodus of baby boomers leaving the workplace. And that leaves us with a generational gap. A generational gap that we do not have enough Gen Xers to fill the gap that the boomers are leaving. So that leaves an opportunity for millennials to lead faster and in more innovative ways. We are truly at a crossroads. We've got a lot of change going on, we've got a low unemployment rate, and we have a multi-generational workforce. So not only are we trying to win the talent, to recruit them into our companies, we are trying to retain the talent and develop them and manage the multi-generational workforce. We have the old way of thinking and the new way of thinking colliding. Many of you may have experienced that in your workplace. We're all coming together and trying to make things work. We have to embrace that change and embrace the differences so we can continue to grow our companies and to grow ourselves. I want to talk a little bit about the generations that we have here. The baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and we have the Gen Z that is coming on the workplace. They're right behind. Do any of you know what your demographics are generationally in your business? You do? Great. You're ahead of the game. At BankPlus, we have 4 traditionalists. We have 23% baby boomers, 34% Xers, and our highest population is 43% millennials. And I would guess to say that probably most of you have a similar footprint, but maybe a little higher on the millennial side. Pam, I saw you shake your head. What does your population look like, out of curiosity?
Well, with my clients or with my employees?
Your employees.
With my employer, it's probably going to be more in the range of the baby
Right, so you're probably experiencing, you've got a lot of baby boomer population, so you probably are going to be experiencing the baby boomers retiring, and so the millennials are going to be coming in. The millennials are the largest population. They surpass the baby boomers. So we've got to think about where we are and where we're going as we try to grow our business. There's a book called Sticking Points written by Hayden Shaw. I don't know if any of you have read that book. It's an excellent read. It talks about the different generations in the workplace and how you can stick together to make things work rather than fall apart and not get along. And in that book, he shares a story about some top executives that just came to this realization that the talent market had changed. And they said, you know, I want to hire boomers and traditionalists. I don't want those millennials. I could care less. Let's just keep on doing the things we're doing. Well, they sat down again. They were drawing out their strategy plan for the next couple of years. And they looked further out and they realized in 10 years, their business was going to be run by millennials. So they made some changes. They decided to learn how to get along with millennials, learn how they operate, and learn how to work with them so they could grow and they could grow their business. So a lot of companies are just now to that realization. And in the book, Sticking Points, there's a lot of good details kind of talking about how each generation likes to be managed. I'll share one with you. When it comes to training, baby boomers look at that as an opportunity, a reward. When it comes to training, Gen Xers look at that as security. When it comes to training for millennials, what do you think that is? It's a given. No, they want it. Why would I work for somebody who didn't have any training? What's wrong with you? So the Gen Z is going to be the same way, but Gen Z, they're looking for games, apps, technology, anything that they can get fast, on-the-go training. So we're going to talk about training and just later on in the presentation. So moving along, I do want to go ahead and move into the 4 points that can help you and your company win the war on talent. There are 4 things that are very critical in today's world. The first is culture. How many of you have a defined culture that's integrated into your business practices and your performance management? Well, great. A lot of us do. That's good news. And if you don't, I encourage you to devise a strong culture because it will set you apart and it will help you attract and retain talent. A strong culture is devised by a blueprint that keeps in mind all employees for a vision for the future and what's ahead. And with a strong culture, you're going to attract the talent that you need. And to be quite frank with you, people that are looking for employment are looking at a strong culture just like they're looking for benefits, just like they're looking for salary. They go hand in hand. You know, when I think of a strong culture, one that comes to mind for me is Chick-fil-A. Years ago, they were ahead of the game. They said, let's develop this culture that's about people. People, caring for people. They did that and they did it so well. You can go to any Chick-fil-A across the United States and you will have the same experience. That is a consistent culture that they got it right. They made sure it was integrated into everything that they did. So I would encourage you to look at culture as something that you can build upon if you don't have one. The second point is engagement, employee engagement. A lot of people think of engagement as, oh, that's just fluff. That's stuff that we don't have time to do. That's just fluffy stuff. This is so critical in the market we are in today. Critical. If you don't engage your employees, you're not going to keep them. They're going to go somewhere else. Gone are the days where you have one job, or you see a resume with 1 or 2 jobs on it. I remember when I started out in recruiting, when we saw a resume that had multiple jobs, we would say, well, what's wrong with this person? They are a job hopper. They're not going to have any stability. I'm not going to waste my time looking at this person. Well, that's the norm we live in today. If we're not engaging our employees, they're going to leave us. TalentSource.com says there are 60% of the millennials and Gen Xers right now are looking for other employment because they're not engaged at their work. So engagement is a must. And I want to spend some time with you to talk about some best practices around engagement And you guys may already be doing some of these things, but I think they're worth talking about for sure. So there are a lot of companies that have engagement teams or Be Better teams. And what those are, they're teams across the company that come together and they talk about what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do to engage our employees, what do we want to see to make it better. And what they do is they actually implement some of the ideas. I mean, a lot of times you bring people together and you hear what they have to say and nothing happens. So when you do what they when you implement their ideas, they feel that you trust them, you care about them, you're part of that company, you're part of that team. So engagement teams are an awesome way to bring people together and to collaborate. Another trend are coaches, professional coaches. A lot of companies have this, and this is separate from human resources, separate from your manager. And it's a coaching program that allows employees to work with a coach to work on their personal and professional life. And it's strictly confidential. Then the third point is pay to leave. Have you guys heard of that concept? Well, there are companies that pay you to leave if you don't fit their culture. One grape will ruin the bunch. How many times have we seen those negative Nellies coming in and they have low engagement, they're, no positivity, no drive. So Zappos is one of the companies that does that now. They pay their employees to leave if they don't align with their culture. An engagement meter. Love this idea. This is phenomenal. And I guarantee you may have a tool that you can use to do this now and you don't realize it. There is a company here in the Jackson metro area that has an engagement meter, and it was at HORNE. I'll give them the credit for that, where I worked previously. So what happens, HORNE has, their main office is here in Ridgeland, but they're across 7 states. And every day, employees come in and they click on their computer their engagement level. And their engagement levels are tied to their culture. So they have selections you can choose. And so when they select it, their picture is next to it. And they have screens across all of the offices that show everybody's engagement. So it brings everybody together in a collaborative way. They all feel like they know each other. Oh, there's so-and-so, look what their engagement is today. And they even have an engagement of, this is just not a very good day. I mean, sometimes it's not all pie in the sky kind of thing. And what they do is they do drawings each quarter for however many times you select the engagement meter, you're put into a drawing, and they'll draw your name and you get time off, or you get an extra paycheck or something like that. So they're encouraging people to be engaged, and they actually track it. So there's a big meter, and it shows for the day, all the employees are at 45% engagement. Well, they've had this in place for about 3 years, and the engagement has improved from the beginning of that. So, and what I said is you may have something that you don't realize that you have that you could use as an engagement tool. Working at BankPlus, I realized in our Ceridian HR system, we do have an engagement tool that I'm looking into that we have and we can use. And it's an opportunity for employees to select how they like to be communicated with and what motivates them. And then there's also a little bar where you can select your engagement for the day. So that's something I'm looking into. And if you have an HRS system, it may be built into it today. Most HRS systems, they recognize the talent crunch that we're in now, and they're looking for ways to help grow their employees and population, so they have tools like that in their systems. Next is flexible work. And this is hard for a lot of people, a lot of companies, but there are many companies that are moving away from 8 to 5, 8 to 4:30. It's work when, how, and where. Just as long as you have the end result, that's what matters. It's a good quality end result. So flexibility is a big deal to a lot of people, especially the millennials coming in. On-demand training. This is an area that is another opportunity to engage your employees. Employees do want to grow, and they want to be developed, not just technically. They want to grow with the soft skills, and they want to learn new things. And so there are a lot of different training opportunities out there. They're not the traditional classroom style. For instance, lynda.com. Have you heard of that? Great tool. There are a lot of companies that use that, and what you can do is you can have tracks that go along with what your culture is or what you want people to be trained on, and they can also be trained basic on what they want to do. Like they want to learn how to take photography or gardening, so they can do that on their own time. So it's a win-win, saying, hey, I care about you. I want you to invest the time that you want on your training, and here's also some other trainings for your business. So last but not least on these trends here, ongoing feedback or continuous feedback. I know probably everyone in this room has heard about that we're moving away from one performance evaluation, 2 performance evaluations, to a continuous feedback model. This is huge. If you want to engage your employees and you want to retain them, you've got to give them feedback. Employees today want real-time feedback. They want transparency. They want to know where they stand. They don't want to be in the dark and find out at the end of the year. So, and it's not just the evaluation. There's all types of feedback. You have continuous on the spot. So, you know, if you saw your employee doing something that you knew that was going to set her up for failure, you would want to tell her right now, right then. But there are so many people in management these days that don't talk to them about it and let them go on. Well, it's setting them up for failure and the business up for failure. There's also, we do need an evaluation, an alignment conversation, a way that we can say, all right, here's your work product and here's what you need to do. So that's important, but the coaching is also important. Making sure you're meeting with employees on a regular basis to coach them, to grow them. That you know, if you're not growing and coaching your employees, it's saying you really don't care about them. I mean, that's how they're feeling if you're not doing that, I can tell you. So I do have a little exercise for us today. There's also a concept called feed forward. Have you guys ever heard of that? Well, feed forward is a great way to work with your employees to get them to get buy-in about feedback, because feedback can be a little intimidating sometimes, right? People like to avoid conflict and they just say, I'm not dealing with it. So what we're going to do is you need to find a partner next to you. Just think about a behavior that you want to change. And for the first minute, and I'm going to time us, for the first minute, you ask the other person to give you ideas of how you can change that behavior, okay? And then I will stop and I'll say switch, and you do the same thing for the other. Does everybody understand? Does that make sense? Okay, let me get my timer out. All right, and go.
I don't ever say like good job.
Is it tied to? Is it tied to?
I don't make you feel better.
All right, now switch to the other person.
I'm not running.
It's almost exactly the same because it's more personality. It's managing behavior or personality. Someone's having a bad day. Everybody having a bad day. And that is something that I'm like, they have a bad day. So it's having these kind of conversations.
All right, guys, lots of great conversation. So let me ask you a question. How does that feel?
Yeah, feels good.
So talk to me me about how that felt. What did you feel after going through that exercise? What was the feeling you received after going through that exercise? Reassuring? What about this table? Appreciate it. Austin?
I need more than a minute.
Okay. Hey, that's wonderful. I will tell you, when you talk about feedback, a lot of times you get negative vibes. But that is a great way to work with your employees and think about feedback differently. And so we've got to learn to leverage each other and grow each other in collaborations and not be stuck in the dark ages where we're just doing our own things and stuck in a silo. We can be so much better together. So those are some trends. I know some of you probably are doing some of these, but I wanted to share them with you. I'm very passionate about all of these things here. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. So let's move to, that's a great segue to move to our third point on helping our businesses win the war on talent, and that is our recruiting strategy. When you have a strong culture and you have a great engagement plan, you've got two wonderful recruiting tools. People are going to want to come work for you. A recruiting strategy is no longer time to fill. If you've ever been in a recruiting environment, but the old way of thinking back in the 80s and 90s was, how quickly can I fill this position so I can have a low time to fill? And actually commissions were tied to that. So today the recruiting strategy is about fit. It is about culture fit, okay? You've got your culture established, so now you're going to hire for that culture. You're not going to just hire for the skill set. You can have somebody that is excellent technically, but they don't align with your culture. They're not going to work out. You got to have both. So I would actually say the culture is more important, the characteristics there, than the technical, because you can a lot of times teach those things depending on what they are. So that means in a recruiting strategy, we've got to ask questions that are surrounding the culture, behavioral type questions. It's not check the box, you know, so there's the interview structure completely changes as well. And a strong recruiting strategy has everybody in the company involved. Everyone is a talent scout. Everybody's looking out for the next best person that they can bring to their organization. And there are a lot of companies that have excellent referral bonuses for that, which is a great incentive. But you think about it, we have so many employees in our organizations that touch people every day, and they see people, and you know, they are ambassadors for the company, and so they're recruiters just like the recruiting team is. So I would encourage you in your recruiting strategy to make sure it aligns with your culture and make sure everybody is integrated into that culture and in their recruiting, excuse me. The next thing, the fourth and final point here, is diversity and inclusion strategy. So how many of you have a diversity and inclusion strategy? Great. This is a must-do. This is a critical component. And what this does is diversity brings innovation. Diversity brings innovation, new ideas, creativity, and a different way of thinking of things. It has to be intentional. We are like-minded creatures. We're always comfortable going to people that we feel comfortable with, but we miss opportunities. We miss growth when we do that. And what a diversity and inclusion plan is an intentional plan that starts with educating leadership and employees of the importance of thinking differently and letting them know that diversity is not just a color. Diversity is not just male or female. Diversity is differences altogether and making people feel like they belong. You know, we've got to make employees feel like they have a voice and to speak up, to have that trust, because that employee that is stifled and not feeling like they can speak up, they may have the best idea in the world and they leave and they make another company just grow and flourish. But we might have that employee right here with us right now. So I do know a company that has a belonging program, and it's a strategy that what they do is they put out applications for their employees, and if they want to join the program, They go through the applications, they have a board that looks at it, and they sponsor different employees in the company to help them grow and to help them flourish with their ideas, because they're looking at those people as the people that are applying may not have had that opportunity. So you might have, for instance, a senior universal teller that may have some great ideas, but she's not in front of leadership as often. So let's sponsor her to get her ideas out there so we can help her grow and hopefully help the business grow as well. So diversity and inclusion should also be tied to your recruiting strategy as well. So that's very important. There's my little clicker. All right, I have an exercise for you. All right, so BankPlus people, you may not want to answer this. So, all right, this is Roman numeral 10, okay? How do you, and you can write this on your little pad here, how do you make a Roman numeral 9 out of that? I'm gonna wait for somebody to tell me.
Oh, you put the I in front of it?
Very good. Very good. How do you make a 6 out of that? You win the prize today. That is awesome. Good job. Did you learn that in the thought patterns class? Okay, good. You get a buy then. You get a buy. So, I recently attended a thoughts pattern class here at BankPlus. It was a wonderful experience. And this is one of the exercises the facilitator gave us. And you know, most people went to Roman numeral, right? When somebody gives us instructions, we're so used to solving problems the same way we always have, looking at things the same way we always have. We miss the forest for the trees. So a simple and great way is to put an S in front of it. So great job. There are so many things that we do in our workplace that tie to that. And that's why I say the diversity and inclusion is so important, because we as human beings have the tendency to solve problems the same way, whether we realize it or not. And we look at things a lot of times in the same way. So when you bring creativity and diversity in, you bring innovation. And so that was just a small example for you. So do you guys have any questions so far? Quiet group. So, okay. All right, so we talked about the current state of talent we're in today. Right now, we have a very low unemployment rate. We have no longer our employees looking for jobs. Jobs are looking for employees. We're all competing for the same people, the brightest and the best. We know in order to do that, we have to make changes. We cannot stay the same. We've got to get out of our comfort zones and have courage to step out and to speak out of things that we need to change. And those 4 things that are critical to just retaining employees are making sure you have a strong culture, making sure you have an engagement strategy, a recruiting strategy, and a diversity inclusion strategy. And that's communicated well, and the leadership is also bought into all of that. So what's next? That's a great question. What's next? Well, I know recently, just the other day, I saw a commercial, a GE commercial that had bots, B-O-T-S. Have any of you seen that commercial? And I read an article about it. They've got bots now that are under development, and so that will eliminate positions and it will change the talent scope as well. So we have to always be ahead and thinking and forward in our approach to things. We're at a time now where something changes every day. We know technology is on the rise, so I challenge you to do that. I challenge you to think about your strategies different, where are you going to be in the next 10 years, and how can you make a difference? Because you can, for sure. We have to trade the comfort for courage. It's easier, just like those executives in that company that Hayden Shaw talked about. They were so comfortable with hiring baby boomers and traditionalists. They didn't want to hire anybody else. They've been doing it for so long, that's where they wanted to be. But they decided to change and to trade comfort for courage, to grow their business and to grow each other. I have a quote here that I'm going to end with. It's, if you ever find that you're the most talented person in the room, you need to find another room. Because we're not the most talented person in the room. There's so many others that can bring things. And I truly believe that I think sometimes people get so comfortable in their little management group, sometimes even the executives, and they don't think about bringing in other people to give the perspective. So make sure when you have meetings and do things, you bring people in from different generations to bring a different idea, bring in diversity so you can talk through and you can build the future together. So that's all that I have for today. I think it went by very fast and I did not intend for it to. What questions do you have, and what are some things you're maybe struggling with at your workplace now that maybe I could give you some insight on?
I don't need this, but I'll use it. So, my HR director, I have some great ideas. They're just that, though, ideas. A lot of women in this room own their own business or they're employees of a company like me. What is the best way for me to approach you so that you will be open to hearing my ideas? I mean, there's got to be the right approach. Otherwise, you're going to shut your door and get back to your job. How's the best way that I can do that?
You're saying for anyone here to approach me? I'm sorry.
But their HR director.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. The best way is to come with solutions and facts. So it starts with, hey, do you know that we have 55% millennials here at our company? I've got a great idea that I think that would help with this. And let me tell you about something another company has done. And the proof is in the pudding there. I mean, there's so many articles and trends and things out there where you can back up what you're wanting to do. So I would go in there and not just say, hey, I think we need to do this. You got to come with some facts and you got to come with some solutions. That is what I would recommend.
Thank you.
Well, I am an entrepreneur, and the thing I've seen in a lot of other cities, and it's slowly happened here, is co-working spaces. What are your thoughts on that? Here we have Coolies and we have Mantle, and it seems that millennials and myself, actually have found myself participating in this, tend to like to work where there are other people. And it's an environment that's very untraditional because it's very laxed. What are your thoughts on co-working spaces and here in this Jackson market?
Great question. That is definitely something that's out there that a lot of people are dealing with. And I truly think that we have a lot of people in the Jackson metro area that are struggling with that. I think we're behind the times there. There are some that are moving towards the times of what the employees need because they're actually listening to them. There are some innovative workstations where there's more collaboration. The millennials, they prefer collaboration. They want to work together, like you said. They want to have that interaction. And so you have, the workspace where you're all together in a circle, where you can, and then if you need some privacy, there's also another office you can kind of do that. I mean, obviously you've heard of people that have standing workstations. They have the exercise balls that they'll sit on at their desk. But I do think that a lot of the companies that I've worked with and seen here in the Jackson metro area are a little outdated in the structures of the office space. And I know there are some companies that are hiring people to come in to look at their space and doing surveys with their employees, asking them what they want, how would they prefer to work. And I know at HORNE we had plug and play workstations, so you could go to any location and work wherever you wanted to. And so I think that's really cool, and that's one of the things that I have. Education reports to HR, and education is down the street, and they're not in the building that I'm in, but we have a plug and play office where that team can come and work here if they need to be. And so there are a lot of times that companies do that as well as another solution. But great question.
Well, with my company, we have we have a variety of ages. And you know, actually our owner is like in his 90s. And so he still kind of comes to work and comes in and comes in for 2 hours a day. But our, you know, it goes, you know, all the way down, and we just hired a guy that just graduated from college. So our age range is vary. So when we sit around a table, how would you suggest us have a conversation? Because we have a young guy, he's very energetic, we love him, I love him. He's like a breath of fresh air because his ideas are so creative and so energetic. But at the same time, we have people at the other end rolling their eyes because, you know, because he's so creative and energetic. So what would be your suggestion on having a conversation to get us to, you know, our minds to meet?
Great question. So many people are probably going through that, I will tell you. And the best approach, in my opinion, is to slowly nudge the concept of moving forward. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. Those people are set in their ways, right? They have a certain opinion about things. But I would encourage the energetic coworker to maybe talk to the 90-year-old and some of the others, and maybe in the open forum, and kind of try to build that trust to say, you know, during the meeting, I want you guys to know I just started working here, and I know I'm going to have to earn your trust. But I want us to be the best we can be together, and I've got some great ideas, but I know I've got to earn it. So if he has an honest conversation, and all of you do that, I mean, because it starts with trust, because he's a new kid on the block, and they're probably thinking, what is, they come in and change everything. They've got to feel like it's collaborative, and it's everybody, because it is, it's a team. It's not just him coming in there doing everything, so that's what I would recommend. Any other questions?
Sorry to ask so many questions, but this was not about me. I have a good friend who's in management, and she actually recently had a millennial come work for her. And she's faced with how does she communicate with this person to carry out her vision for the office. She gave her a project to do, and the young lady turned it into her, and there were a lot of things that she wanted to change about it. And when she gave it back to her, she thought that the young lady would get it back to her before she left the office that day, which means she would have to stay after 5. Well, 5 o'clock came, she left, and she was just, her mind was blown because she really didn't expect that she would leave. And so she was like, I don't know what to say, you know, because I've read that if I say certain things to him, that would discourage her and make her feel unwanted. She's like, but I just want her to do the work and do it to the best of her ability. So what advice would you give a manager in that type of position where they have a person who's underperforming to their expectations, and so that they can both move forward?
That's another great question, and I've experienced those situations before. The best thing to do for a manager that has a millennial that they're managing is never assume anything. You have to tell them what you want. We assume, because we're used to working a certain way, that person's going to work the same way we do. Everybody's different. There's no two sides, you know, one size fits all. So I would encourage her to say, here are my expectations, you know, and provide that real-time feedback. So when she didn't get that, she needs to call her in her office and say, hey, we need to learn to work together. I know that you may be used to a certain way, me too, but here are my expectations and what I expect of you. And then also, she needs to listen to that employee. What do you need from me? How can we work better together? But I tell you, I mean, being a millennial, I mean, it's just, you know, we've had people that just don't show up for work. They'll call at 12 o'clock, or, you know, just crazy stuff. I mean, sometimes it's not about the generation, it's just about the individual, right? But I think in this situation, there's just a lack of communication because you don't know what you don't know. I always say that. And we all have blind spots. And that's why I think that continuous feedback is so important. Because if we don't tell people, they won't know. And they will make train wrecks of themselves. And they'll make you look bad and the company look bad. So rip the Band-Aid off, have the hard conversation, but do it in a caring way. That's what I would recommend. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
How have you seen the interview process change with millennials, and you know, because I think we all, well, a lot of people in this room were under certain impressions about how our resume should look, what you can say in the first interview, what you have to wait to talk about, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's another good question. So the interview process has changed significantly. We talked about the culture questions you've got to ask, but right now I'll tell you there's so many different technology tools that are used in recruiting. There's one tool that is a video tool that what you do is you ask us maybe like 5 different questions. Some are culture, some are what the requirements are of the job. You send the email or the message to the person and they get it and they get in front of a computer and you see them and it records their responses to the questions. And so it comes back to you, you look at it and you can immediately decide what you want to do. So that's very popular right now. A lot of companies are doing that. So that's one way. Resumes these days, you know, they're on demand, they're out there. You know, there's so many different sites. I don't know if you know about the on-demand talent pool that's going on now, but you can upload your profiles, not so to speak a resume, and your picture, and you're put into a talent pool and they'll call you when there are openings that become available. But many companies are moving to that place because there's so many people that don't want to work 8 to 5 or in an office. So they are going to that route of talent on demand where they can work when they want to work and how they want to work, just as long as the product is there. So interviewing definitely has changed. Gone are the days of writing down answers to questions and old-fashioned. And resumes are important. First impression. Make sure there's no misspelled words on there and keep it to 1 page. People don't want a 2 or 3 page resumes. They're going to get to the point. They're going to see that header, and that's going to set you apart, whatever that very beginning part of your resume has. So that's a good question too. It sounds like some of you ladies knew about the virtual interview. Do you guys use that?
I've done it before.
Okay. What did you think about it?
It's interesting because you can preset the questions you want based upon the position you're looking for. And it's a great pre-screening opportunity when you're flooded with so many resumes. And you also, if you're looking for communication skills, interaction, you can get a good glimpse of that, but you have to follow up with the in-person interview. But it was great.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, Alison, how about pre-screening through social network sites?
Yes, there's nothing wrong with you going out there. And if you wanted to be, if you were interested in Deborah and you were going to hire her, you can go out there and make sure what you're not going to do. I'm just using it because she's sitting there. You can go out there. What does she do? And I'll tell you, I've got some crazy stories now. People aren't who they are. I mean, oh my goodness. I know. I mean, I would tell you the story, but it's a little bit too risque. But so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because they put it out there. That is on them. So, good question.
I have a question. You know, in today's workforce, we've gone from casual dress, you know, to just whatever. You know, a lot of people are wearing like, you know, pants that look like tights or whatever. Can you address the do's and don'ts of
I'd love to do that. Great question. Let me scan the room and see if everybody's dressed appropriately. So dress is very important in the impression that you make, the impact that you want to make. Whether you like it or not, people look at you and they think of you in a certain way based on the way that you're dressed. And if you want to, they go hand in hand. If you come in with leggings on and a slouchy shirt, people are going to think you're slouchy. They're not going to look at you in a way that, well, I want her on my team. She's organized, she's put together, she knows what she's doing. It's an opportunity to sell yourself. So I know people say, oh, looks don't matter and all that. It's what's inside that matters. But it's the way that you take care of yourself. I mean, you don't want to go prancing around in a mini skirt and a low-cut shirt at work. And if you worked at a different place maybe, but not in a business environment. So dress code is a big deal these days for a lot of companies. And a lot of them are stuck back in the ages. Melissa is one of my previous coworkers. We worked together, and you know, we were kind of in that time period years ago at a company we worked for where we had to wear pantyhose, and we're looking at, what? Are you crazy? So, you know, that was 1980s, and you still have a little bit of that going on. But just, you know, professional dress, I mean, you don't have to wear a suit and a tie every day, but it definitely is changing, and the millennials coming in flip-flops, that's not appropriate for a business work environment. I mean, it's just really not. But to each his own, and every company has their own culture, right? So if you look at Google or a technical company, they're going to be more techy, and they're, you know, so it really depends on the culture that you're establishing on the dress code. Good question. Anybody else want to talk about anything that you do that you might want to share with us at your company?
Or just make a comment.
Or just make a comment.
I don't really necessarily need a mic.
Okay.
I'm pretty loud. I'm kind of giggling to myself as I'm hearing a lot of this because I'm with the Jackson Free Press. I've been there for, I think, 6 to 8 months. I have to sit down and try and remember. It's been a while. But almost all of the staff there in the office are of the millennial generation. I mean, most of them are between the ages of about 23 and 27. And when I first started, they gave me like the same, you know, binder of information that they give to all of their new employees, which they've geared toward that demographic, because that's, I mean, really everybody but 2 of us are in that age group. And I'm the old woman of the office. So, and I took it home, it's this big, thick thing, and it's like, you know, Jackson Free Press University, something. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm flipping through it. And it was so detailed about a lot of these things that I'm thinking, who doesn't know that? I mean, to the point of like, here's what classifies as pants and here's what doesn't. Like, here's what flip-flops are and here's what are not flip-flops. Like, here's, you know, and it was very, and they incorporate some flexibility. Like, if you're an editorial and you're going to be sitting in the office all day and you know you're not going out for any interviews and you know all you're doing is writing and no one else is going to see you, you can wear your flip-flops. So they put some flexibility in there. Also acknowledging, like, if you're going to be a public face of the company in any way leaving the office, then here's what you need to be wearing. But I mean, that's just, it's like this thick, and it's so much stuff that I was just cracking up looking through, like, who needs this information? But it is just, I'm sorry.
It's not taught anymore.
That's exactly right. And it's also, I think, there are a lot more companies, like you were saying, Google and tech companies, that are getting away from a lot of the things that more established, not established, but like more conservative and traditional companies still think of as common sense. And so a lot of people coming out of school or coming out of university, maybe they've interned or worked over the summer at a company that is more flexible about what their work schedule is like, or, you know, there's a lot of people that come into our office expecting that if they're going to show up at noon instead of 9 and then just work late because something came up, they don't have to tell anybody. Like, as long as they get their work done, it's fine.
That's
true. And maybe this office isn't that way, but every place else that they've worked has been, because it's becoming more and more common. So, yeah, it's funny because it's like you were talking about, it's setting expectations of things that you don't necessarily think that you would need to.
Right, and that goes to the point of simplification, you know, just getting to the point, but communicating effectively, never assuming, to your point, they're used to doing that, or they think there's something wrong with it, and nobody's telling them about it.
Right.
And so then they're like, why in the world did you do that? Well, we're not telling them on the front end, we're assuming that they know.
Right.
So we have to be we've got to be forthright with our communication.
They're also coming out of a school environment. For most of us, when we went to high school, we didn't have, or I'm guessing at least, I didn't have, like, you know, metal detectors when we came in. I didn't have to, like, necessarily ask the teacher for permission to go to the bathroom. Like, things were a lot different than they are now. And these are people that are coming out of a school environment from high school that they are used to having every single minute of every day regulated by an authority force. So if you don't specifically tell them something, like, that's the communication they're used to, is that constant oversight, constant structure.
Well, it is, and it's constant. Well, also on demand. That's the buzzword. I mean, fast food, things are at your fingertips when you need it. And at schools, they spoil them at the schools too. We spoil them. It's, I mean, you know, we're part of the problem too. So they're used to that, and so it's definitely a change in the way that we have to think when we manage them. Because another point, just to kind of bring what you're talking about, I have talked to millennials that don't even know what a check is. I've never had a check. What are you talking about? I don't have a voided check. So they don't use that. Everything is and online. And one millennial that we were going to have, no, not knocking the millennials because I love them and I think they've got great ideas and they're innovative, but she was interviewing and came in. We ended up hiring her, and we had a new hire orientation. We brought in all the employees from the different areas to come in for the orientation. And she says, "Can I bring my dog with me? And will you help me find a pet daycare for him?" You know, like she was gonna bring the dog and then take the dog to daycare. So it's like they're so almost like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the word is, but you know, and I'm just gonna say maybe a little entitled sometimes. I think all generations can be that way based on the way you're brought up, though. I mean, you really can't. But I just wanted to share those 2 stories with you. Great point. Anything else y'all want to?
I just want to say, I can't believe I'm telling this. But this week I sent a blank check with my almost 17-year-old to a tutor. That's actually William Goodman's mother, so I'm hoping William doesn't tell Bill Ray. And she goes, "Mama," she asked me to fill out the check. And I was like, "I don't know how to write a check." And I was like, "Oh God." I mean, she doesn't have a checkbook. I mean, she's like debit card, you know. So it's scary.
It is. It really is.
Mom is a banker. A banking tutor.
I love it. That's the reality that we live in, though, for sure.
I had a friend of mine that pasted it.
Thanks for sharing that.
I said, "Just give it to Miss Goodman." That's hilarious.
Any other challenges you're facing in your workplace, or anything from an HR perspective? I know we talked a lot about talent today, but in engagement, culture, anything you want to share?
I just have a question about like ongoing feedback. We do like a annual review. Like, how often would you change if you were going to do the like monthly, quarterly?
Right. Here's what I would recommend for the ongoing feedback is you definitely need to keep the review or the alignment conversation, the evaluation. It doesn't need to be cumbersome and drawn out. I mean, it just gets to the point, right? Here's your job, and here's what you're doing well, and here's what you need to work on, okay? Because it's basically saying, I see what you're doing, I know what you're doing, and here's what you need to do to improve, right? So I would say once or twice a year for the evaluation, but then you have coaching all throughout the year. And you probably are doing coaching now and don't realize it. But you turn it into coaching and you communicate with your employees if that's what you're doing now. So coaching's, that's interval times where you're meeting with your employees on a one-on-one basis to huddle, to realign, kind of like a basketball game, football game. Here's what we're doing, here's what we need to be doing, let's realign. And those are more informal. They're not documented, but you're on the same page and you know where you're going. There are a lot of different tools with HRS systems and we're looking at a new feedback model for BankPlus right now. We're going to be changing some of the things with our performance that we do here, where you can have real-time feedback for different people that you work with other than your supervisor too. And so you might do a shout out, is what some of them call, and you just, you're doing a great job here, thank you for that. And you can kind of track that way. But I would do the evaluations, the coaching forward, and the real-time feedback when they need to know it. And that doesn't really have to be documented. It's just a culture thing, really. It's a culture, and it takes a lot of companies a long time to learn because they're so used to doing it that way. And so what you'll probably need to do is incorporate training, education, and model what it's going to look like. Thank you guys so much for being here.